In 2001, 17 frustrated software developers got together in a place called Snowbird in Utah, United States, in a ski resort to discuss their frustrations. Those people had similar perspectives that something was wrong, something was not going well to the way they were working. But they were actually quite rivals in some perspectives. They came from different backgrounds, different ways of working. Some of them working with Scrum, some of them working with extreme programming, feature-driven development, and many other frameworks. But they have something in common. They were very frustrated or not so happy with the way that things were going for them when it comes to producing software and connecting that to the business, how the product was managed, how the project was managed, and something was literally off. Something was not working for those people and for many people in the software development community. So on that day, they developed something that became quite famous, that then created many courses, certifications, and well, it's spreading around since then. Unfortunately, we have a big misconception, people don't really understand what they did that day, but they still think that they are doing something called Agile when they are actually just doing something else. My name is William. I would like to introduce you to the concept of Agile, try to help you understand what is exactly the Agile Manifesto, what was the idea when Agile was born, and what actually is or is not Agile, so you can understand that from the basics. This is a very foundation video to explain the concept, okay? So on that day, they wrote something that, as I said, was called the Agile Manifesto. And that is public, that is something you can find online. And basically, the Agile Manifesto was organized into 4 basic pillars. Very easy to understand if you want to understand. First, individuals and interactions over process and tools. They are not saying that process and tools are not important. What they're saying here is that people and the interaction between the people who are working is more important than the process itself. And it's more important than the tool they are using to build or to follow the process, to build a product, to work in their project. People talk, people have difference, and they need to solve that by some kind of relationship between them. And this is important, this is crucial to build great software. If you are a developer, talk to your customer. If you are a product owner, talk to your developer and to your customer. Talk to people will make sure that it's the basic thing that will make sure that you are working in the right thing. The second pillar of the manifesto was working software over comprehensive documentation. Again, they are not saying here the documentation is not important. Actually, many of them have very good books explaining how to do good software documentation. But what they are saying here is the most important metric for a good software is the software itself. Is the software solving a problem? Is the software working to solve a customer need, a customer requirement? That is the most important thing that a software must produce. The third pillar, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. This is another moment that you need to always reflect on. I will mention that in all the pillars. It's not that the contract is not important. Of course it is. You have a legal department in your company for a reason. But the collaboration with the customer to make sure that what you're starting to build, what you are doing with your lines of code is the right thing is, of course, to talk with the person who is going to use that. So that is the thing behind customer collaboration, making sure that the person who is going to use the product you are building is actually aligned to what you are building right now. And then finally, the fourth pillar is responding to change over following a plan. And this is, of course, where the biggest connection between the waterfall model of work and agile clash a little bit, because, or they should not clash, but people clash a little bit on this topic, because the plan is really important. There is no agile process or framework or way of working without planning. How often, even those with very small cycles and it's very small iteration process, they have a planning moment to make sure that at least for that week, they know what is being executed, and they know that they're executing the right things, and they know that they're executing in the right way, in the right sequence. So the planning is very important. Having a plan is crucial. It's not about that, but responding to change is more important, because over the time things will happen and you need to be flexible, you need to adjust. And that is one of the biggest confusion with the terminology agile. Agile in the sense of this this manifesto, the way of working, is not about going faster, but it's about being flexible. It's about adapting what you are doing and responding to the change. When you look to your company and you want to bring agility to your business, what it means is not agility in the way that you are going to move faster with your strategy, but that your strategy will be always iterated over the time instead of being fixed for the next 5 years. You are going to adapt that, responding to the change in the market, responding to the change in your business, in your area, with your customers. That is what Agile is about. Okay, I really hope that part is clear to you, because together with these 4 pillars, they wrote basically 12 principles. And I will put the link of the Agile Manifesto in the description so you can understand that. But basically, if we summarize, the principles are saying that they want to satisfy the customer. They want to make sure that the customer is happy with continuous deliverable and valuable software. They want to ensure that change requirements or any kind of change is welcome, even late in the development. So the agile process should be prepared and adjust in a way that change is welcome, because change is part of the game instead of building the wrong things. And as I mentioned, the pillars, working software is the primary measure of success of the team and the product. So 12 principles, many of them talking about, of course, architecture, people, process. But the core, it's always about those 4 pillars, about people and about adaptation, about responding to change. Okay? So many people don't understand that the frameworks that arrived after that, or the ones that already existed but then were connected to the world of Agile, they are a way of working to connect with the culture. And this is where Agile is in the model of culture. Agile is it's something that is how you live for your work, in your work, how you work in general, but it's a concept more on the cultural side. Okay? Agility is the same thing. Like, you cannot implement agility following a book with, like, you have those 12 pages, this manual, you're going to implement that, and after that you're going to be agile. That's not how it works. And that's why I said in the beginning of the video that people clash for the very wrong reasons. The frameworks that are born or their work around Agile, for example, is Scrum, Kanban, extreme programming, or the scalable ones like SAFe and some other frameworks. They exist to solve a specific problem. And the problem they are trying to solve is the kind of problem that is called complex in the Knafing framework, who divide different kind of problems. And this kind of problem requires you to have a faster response to the changes, and that you adapt your plan over the time. So basically, in the traditional way of working, you have the scope, a schedule or time, and you have, of course, this organized in a way that will always be connected to a budget. So we have these three things. Normally, in the more traditional approach, you have a fixed scope, and then you are going to calculate and organize for this fixed scope your time and your budget. In the agile environment, where you change that a little bit. You make the time and the budget fixed. In this case, having a fixed team with 8 people is a way of fixing your budget, and you fix the time. Like in Scrum, you have iterations every 2 weeks, the sprints. So you have those two things fixed, and you are going to do a variation of the scope. The scope that will go into those 2 weeks, you're going to change over time, and you are going to adapt the changes as they are needed. And this is the most simple difference if you want to understand why for some moments we have a more traditional waterfall approach and why for some other kind of problems you have with Scrum. Because if you are building software, of course Scrum will be a better response, because you need to adapt, you need everything that we mentioned here in the Agile Manifesto is true. You need to adapt, you need to respond faster. Maybe the customer mentioned something, but they were thinking differently. And now that we start to build it, they see that they want something completely different. So we start adapting, and every sprint, you check that you are building the right thing. And in the end, you have a good software, not something that you align with your customer. In January, you build over the year, and then in December, it's done, but you discover that it's not even close to what the customer wanted. So that's an example of software. But on the other way around, you have an airport. An airport, it is a very good example of a problem that you need to use, or you should use, a more traditional approach. Because you're not going to validate your airport every 2 weeks. You're not going to validate with your customer and do changes in the project of this airport over the time. You have a very fixed scope, okay? And you have a very fixed scope that you're going to have then, after planning, your specific budget to make sure this scope is built, and the time that you should deliver your airport. If you try to use a different methodology than the ones prepared for that, like the PMI methodology, the classical one with a traditional project management, if you don't use that one that is the best practice, you're going to fail in the same way that you would fail using a traditional waterfall approach to build a good software product. Okay? Does it mean that there are a better framework or a better solution? Of course not. Of course not. It's the same like building a house. You have different tools. And for those different problems that you have, or different situations, you're going to use the right tool. Framework is the same thing. Okay? So I really hope this introduction to Agile helped you to understand a little bit better what is Agile and why or how it was proposed to be a solution. And in the more videos that we're going to make to discuss Agile, I want to bring some of the problems that unfortunately people are making confusing what Agile proposed to the business and to the solutions and to solve problems. And that is the reason why we see people saying, oh, Agile is dying, Agile is not relevant anymore. That's because they are looking to the frameworks, or they are looking to applying the wrong the right solution to the wrong problem, or vice versa. And basically, they start putting the guilty on the, of course, on Agile, because they don't know what they are doing with that. And I'm very, very critical to that. Normally, I'm very soft on my approach in majority of the things, but with that one, it's very clear that people are making a lot of mistakes, trying to use a good thing on the wrong situation, or trying to use the wrong thing in the right. You understand the point, right? So let's explore more. Let's deep dive into that topic in the next coming video. Please leave in the comments what do you think. What is the main problem that you see when it comes to this discussion on Agile and different frameworks, and I'll be very glad to continue the discussion with you. Hope to see you in the next video. Bye.